Hello again. It is Saturday, June 29th, 2024, and this is Alan Zundel presenting Political Dharma. Of course, the big news this week in the presidential campaigns was the debate on CNN between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But as usual, I'm going to be covering this from the standpoint of how the event affects the campaigns of the leading alternative presidential candidates, such as independent candidates Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West, and the leading minor party candidates, such as Libertarian Party nominee Chase Oliver and Jill Stein, the very likely nominee of the Green Party. So I watched most of this debate as it was happening live, not all of it. I watched it not from CNN, but from the Kennedy campaign's RealDebate.com website, where they had set up a system in which you could watch the CNN debate and listen to what Joe Biden and then Donald Trump had to say in response to the various questions as they were presented to them. And at the same time, you would then be taken back to a Los Angeles studio where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. took a podium himself and watched on a big screen TV the questions and answers that Joe Biden and Donald Trump were being presented, so that he could present his own answers and be a kind of participant in that debate. Very clever way of going about this I thought. So I watched it on that, and my impressions were similar to what I heard from a lot of other media sources, that Joe Biden performed very terribly and Trump was Trump as usual. So just in comparison, they were mostly saying this really hurt Joe Biden. But what I'm going to start here with is how Kennedy came off before I get to talking about the major party candidates. So in Kennedy's campaign, he was, especially compared to the two guys on the CNN stage, he was articulate. And even though he didn't always stick to answering the question, neither did the other two. In Trump's case, especially egregious. But in Kennedy's case, when he spoke, he clearly presented his point, and his points were important to what he wanted to say in his campaign. So let's listen to a little bit of one of his early statements and what how he presented himself for this.
This is the first time that a private corporation owns the debate. And it's troubling because CNN is making tens of millions of dollars from this debate. And so they have an incentive to go ahead and collude with the two presidential candidates whose main purpose was to keep me off the stage. And again, this isn't a personal issue. This is something that's important for our democracy, because Americans feel like the system is rigged. And this is this collusion with a corporation or profit corporation, that both those campaigns are going to be pumping in tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising. So it's all a big payoff. This is exactly the kind of merger of state and corporate power that I'm running in order to oppose. And Americans believe that the system is rigged against them because it is. And this is an example of how badly rigged it is.
So that was candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. making what I regarded as a very clear, articulate, and cogent case for why his campaign is important in this process, and how the major party candidates are failing the United States and our democratic systems by leading with the issue of corporate control of the media. He also was able to segue into corporate control of the government in general, and that is one of the main reasons why he's running. So I thought he did a very good job there. Now, on the other hand, Trump was Trump. He often evaded questions and went on tangents and was very on the attack all the time. But it's not going to change anybody's mind for or against him after this debate, I think. But what it did do is change a lot of people's impressions of how bad things are with Joe Biden. Now, in the main, he was able to answer questions, even though sometimes he a little bit lost the thread of what he was trying to say, or he wasn't quite presenting himself well. He was not very animated, didn't make a good impression, but it wasn't about the things he said so much as how he presented himself. And the main question in people's minds, of course, was, is he able to handle the job for another 4 years, given his age, which I think is about 82. Let's see. This is one of the worst parts of the debate, and it came very early on. In answer to, I think, about the third question, he began to fumble and stumble his way through this. So let's take a look at how Biden really, I turned to my wife after this clip and I said, he just lost the election.
That $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
So as you probably saw in the news reports immediately after the debate and continuing in the last couple of days, there was quite a panic in the Democratic Party establishment over his performance. And in fact, we saw a lot of folks actually talking about trying to get him out of the race. Here's one of many articles, this one from Politico, that says that the movement to convince Biden not to run is real. And a lot of media commentators have been coming out and saying they think that he should step aside and let somebody else run. But is that very likely to happen? I would say not very likely to happen, and I'll give you a demonstration of why. So far, I haven't seen any leading Democrats coming out and saying he should step aside from the nomination process. But here is Joe Biden in a rally in North Carolina, I think the day after the debate, and what he had to say. And ask yourself, after you hear this, if he is likely to step aside.
I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. Well, I know. I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know right from wrong. And I know how to do this job. I know how to get things done. And I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
So as you could see and hear there, Joe Biden, probably with a little rest and the help of a teleprompter, was able to make his case for his candidacy much more strongly, and already starting to show how he's going to be spinning his poor performance by acknowledging that he is older and that he's not always on point about when he has to debate or make statements of the rest. That's been obvious for a while. And a lot of people just tuning in for the first time saw how obvious it is and how badly he can lose the thread. Anyway, this is his modus operandi, and it has been for a number of years. When people tend to count him out, he decides he's going to double down. So he can be very stubborn about these kind of things, and I don't think anybody, any bigwigs in the party or his wife, Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, is likely to start pressuring him to step aside. More likely, they are going to fall in line like they generally do in the Democratic Party, trying to protect their own position within the party by not going against the Democratic establishment, by going along with the party line. But that hasn't kept people from continuing behind the scenes or in front of the cameras from, if they're not, politicians in front of the cameras, media commentators, all of them speculating about, well, what are we going to do about this? Now, is it possible that the Democratic Party can get rid of Joe Biden at this point, even if he does not want to go? Well, yes, it is possible, and I'm going to tell you why here. First of all, the Democratic Party has already issued its convention call in which it gave the rules for how the convention is going to be conducted. And as you can see here in part of it, this would be in section 9.f.3 and subsections A and D. The first one says, this subsection A says that the automatic delegates, which we usually know as superdelegates, retain their ability to vote according to their own preferences. It means they're free to vote for anybody they want who has been put into nomination in the convention. And then subsection D says that the rest of the delegates who are pledged to a presidential candidate shall, in all good conscience, reflect the sentiments of those who elected them. Now, the question for them is whether those who elected them are feeling like they should replace Joe Biden, or by the time you get to the convention, how they'll feel about that. So a lot of them could join with automatic delegates or superdelegates to decide to put somebody else in nomination and then make that person the candidate instead of Joe Biden. So it's possible, especially if things continue to not go very well for Joe Biden in the couple of months before the, I think the convention is in August. The Democratic convention is August. So in the time between now and then, if things continue to deteriorate for the Biden campaign, maybe some of them will get together and try to put other names into the nomination process. Of course, there will be already names other than Biden's, like Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips, who did earn some delegates. And there are a lot of delegates who are uncommitted to any candidate because primarily of that effort to get people to vote on committed and similar types of votes during the presidential primaries because of Biden's position on Israel's war against the Palestinians in Gaza. So there could be enough people to try to bring the campaign, bring the convention to a different nominee if they can find somebody. I don't think either Marianne Williamson or Dean Phillips is going to be somebody who can collect enough delegates at the convention, but possibly some big name Democrat such as Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, or there's talk about the Michigan governor, Gretchen Whitmer. That's possible, but again, I don't think it's likely. And the reason here is that, let me show you this one. And I've talked about this before, how the Democratic National Committee has already decided that it is going to choose the nominees with a virtual roll call in advance of the national convention. Now, it hasn't determined yet the date of this, but it's going to be later than July 21st, which is when the Credentials Committee for the convention meets. But now it's becoming fairly clear why they set up this nomination process, and it wasn't simply because they were trying to get on the ballot in states where there's early deadlines for putting the nominee on the ballot, early, that is, before the convention could be held. In this case, I think it's become clear that the reason they're holding this online vote is because they anticipated that even though they were going to try to have this early debate under their own rules and try to get Biden pumped up and ready for it, that he could not perform very well. And so they thought it's important to head off the possibility that there could be a runaway convention that nominates somebody else. So they're going to have this process of an online vote to make sure he's locked in as the candidate. So I think the most likely scenario here is that Biden's going to remain the candidate. He doesn't want to step down. None of the head honchos in the party so far that I know of have stepped forward to tell him to step aside for somebody else. So it looks like he's going to stick in the race, and it looks like they're going to make sure he's the nominee before we even get to the convention. So in that eventuality, what's going to happen with the other candidates? Can they pull something off? It does create an opening for alternative candidates, and candidates such as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have been advancing in getting ballot access and doing the things they need to do to have a more viable campaign. For example, earlier this week, Kennedy got enough signatures, I think twice as many as needed, more than twice as many needed. He got enough signatures to get on the ballot in Illinois, and by my count, that brings him to a total of 23 states in which he's fulfilled requirements for getting on the ballot, even though a lot of those states have not yet certified his petitions or certified his party's petitions to get on the ballot. And also this week, Cornel West, the other independent candidate, got the nomination of the Vermont Green Mountain Peace and Justice Party, so he got on the ballot in Vermont. And so both of these independent candidates, as well as the Libertarian Party and the Green Party, are advancing and getting on the ballot in various states so that they can have a shot of collecting voters across the country and, perform better than they would. And I think there's a good chance that they're going to get more votes than they would have after this debate. You never know what's going to happen in the next few months, but as of this debate, I think people who like Trump are going to stick with Trump. People who like Biden, the Democratic loyalists, are going to stick with Biden, but there's going to be those independent voters who maybe were leaning towards Biden and decided, this really looks bad, so I need to look around and see what my options are. By now, they've probably heard at least that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a potential candidate in their state. They may not know if he's on the ballot. They may not know anything about ballot access, but they know that he's a candidate running a campaign, so they may take a look at him. I think they will. His CNN, his Real Debate thing on his website, which was also streamed on X, got, I think, around 9 million views at least. And of course, rerunning segments for it. More people are going to be exposed to that. And people already know there are minor parties like the Green Party and the Libertarian Party. May not know much about them. Some folks may not even know there are alternatives. But I think they're going to start listening to any indications that may have other choices than Trump and Biden, who they didn't like much in the first place. And now they have good reason to say, maybe I really do need to look at some alternatives here. So this could affect the alternative party candidates in getting more votes than they would have. On the other hand, there are efforts to keep them off the ballot. Now, just this week in North Carolina, as usual, there was an effort to keep the alternative candidates off the ballot. We see here a article from the Ballot Access News by Richard Winger, and it says the North Carolina State Board of Elections voted 3-2 to postpone deciding whether to put 3 new parties on their ballot. Now, the 3 were Democrats and the 2 were Republicans, and I think that is because they're mostly concerned that the candidates, the candidates for these 3 parties, 2 of them are going to, they think, take votes from Biden, and that would be Kennedy and Cornel West. So if you look a little downward in this article, if you're following on the video form of this podcast, they are concerned the Constitution Party petition lists the party address on the petition instead of the address of the state chair. Now that shows you the kind of picky things that are required in getting ballot access. You wouldn't think that making a mistake like that would be hard to rectify. You would think that the Board of Elections would simply say, oh, they put the wrong address on the petition. They should have put the state chair rather than the party. And so let's have them rectify this, file a new form or whatever. But no, these are often things that the major parties use to try to, get them off the ballot. Little points, fine points. Every state has its own set of rules that can be used to get people off the ballot. And they also said that the Democrats felt that the other 2 party petitions, that would be for the We the People Party of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the Justice for All Party of Cornel West, might have tricked some voters into signing. Now, what grounds do they have for thinking they were tricked? By the way, these petitions first went to the county boards because they had to get so many signatures in each county, and the county boards all said that the 3 petitions had enough valid signatures. It's just when it's going to the State Board of Elections that these problems are starting to emerge. So Kennedy has on his website a long list. He's got an article, I think, in the press section where he gives a long list of states in which he's either had to have lawsuits so he can force states to put him on the ballot because he's already met criteria and they're holding it back, or he's had to respond to challenges to keeping him on the ballot from other parties, usually Democratic operatives and affiliated organizations are trying to get him off the ballot where he is on it, or keep him off the ballot where he's trying to get it on it. And they mentioned states such as Hawaii, Utah, Idaho, New Jersey, New York. But here is one from North Carolina, which I just talked about, questioning whether the Kennedy campaign was tricking voters into voting for him. And we see here that the reason is the Democratic Party says the party, meaning Kennedy's We the People Party, is using a loophole in the law to pretend it's a political party when it's a candidate campaign committee. So the candidate doesn't have to collect more signatures than they otherwise would have to and avoid contribution limits. So what they're saying is essentially, hey, we got these rules that are inconsistent about how to get on the ballot. Parties have an easier time here than independent candidates, so we're not going to accept it if the candidate who is otherwise independent is trying to get a party started somewhere that would nominate him. Again, it's a very picky way of trying to keep people off the ballot. I think, you might have your own opinion on this, but that's what I think. Now, on the other hand, what was wrong with Cornel West's petition? Well, here we see an article from NBC News, an extensive article documenting that GOP operatives, that is Republican Party operatives, were involved in gathering signatures for the Cornel West campaign to get on the ballot there. If you look at the highlighted part, if you're watching the video, it says tens of thousands of signatures gathered on behalf of Cornel West in key states was thanks to not only the self-organized grassroots volunteers, because this is a very low budget campaign, but also, and here's the key phrase, some help from outside operatives tied to the Republican Republican consulting firm. Well, here further down in the article, it says that NBC News obtained internal emails and other evidence that suggests that there was somebody else trying to help West get on the ballot in North Carolina, even if, and they concede this, his grassroots allies trying to get this party on the ballot were not fully aware of it. So they're not accusing the West campaign necessarily of knowing what was happening, but looking to the next paragraph, the pro-West Justice for All party authorized 3 people to pick up and drop off signatures for them statewide, and all 3 are current or past employees of a Colorado-based Republican political firm called Blitz Consulting. Well, what is going on there? Well, this has happened many times in the past where the major parties, they may not, give direct orders to do this, but they have people affiliated with those parties in various states who know what they need to do. They kind of get the hint, and they, from past experience as well, that they go around and find ways to try to sabotage the other party by using other candidates, alternative party candidates in particular, to try to draw votes away from the other major party. That may have been a little convoluted way to put it, but here what we see is Republicans trying to help Cornel West get on the ballot because they think Cornel West may pull some votes, particularly from black voters, away from Biden, and then reduce his share of the vote in North Carolina. So we see not only the Democrats trying to keep alternative candidates off the ballot, but sometimes a major party is trying to get them on the ballot, and this is not necessarily through the fault of the minor party or the independent candidate. In this case, certainly I think it's not their fault. It's just that they didn't have the resources to check out everybody's background, and we find, how would you even know these people are people who are somehow affiliated with the Republican Party and volunteering to gather signatures for you for ulterior reasons. So on the one hand, we have efforts to get the independent and alternative party candidates off ballots, but on the other hand, major parties are also helping them get on the ballot. Now, if it creates a situation where the state elections board is going to throw them off the ballot because they see that, as they say, people were being tricked, that although they were being told, I guess in some cases, reading further in the article, it says they were actually going to Republican rallies and telling people, or Republican events of one kind or another, and telling people, hey, we're trying to keep Trump, get him elected, so if you sign this for Cornel West, blah, blah, blah. So there is some tricking going on. It's not attributable to the campaign, but it could invalidate signatures. On the other hand, if they're not caught and they get away with this, they could help candidates get on the ballot. And so it's kind of like one side or the other. You know, they're either getting them off the ballot or they're helping them get on the ballot. So we may have a situation that's hard to determine how many ballots they're going to be on, but they are making progress. We don't know yet how that all is going to turn out. Where does that leave us? Well, they will be on the ballots in some places, and people are looking for alternatives to the major parties, especially now to Biden. But those who don't like Trump are going to be looking around. But maybe even those who are leaning towards Republicans say, well, Donald Trump's still doing his thing, and I'm not sure I like it. Oh, I've heard about other candidates. Who's this Kennedy from the Kennedy family? What's he got to say? I've heard maybe he is somebody who would address some of my concerns. So it could help them get. Now, is this actually going to make a difference? Some of my previous videos, I explained what a contingent election was. Back in April 19th, I talked about the contingent election, and then on April 26th, in discussing how I thought it was possible that RFK could win. I'm not saying that it's real likely, but it's possible he could win. And how he could win would be that enough people vote for him in key states to deprive the major party candidates of enough votes in the Electoral College so that they're not able to win outright, and then the election is thrown into the House of Representatives. Now, I will be talking more about contingent elections in the future as we go forward, and I watch how likely this is to happen. But again, what could happen? You don't elect that president according to how many votes they get across the nation. It's state by state. Whoever gets the most votes wins. And so somebody like Kennedy, if he got the most votes in a state, and this could very well happen in states that have ranked choice voting, Alaska and Maine, although I need to double check if this actually applies to the presidential election. But in any event, if Kennedy gets the most votes in swing states, where it'd be easiest for him to do that because Trump and Biden are splitting votes between them, and so Kennedy doesn't have to overtake one of the major party candidates who's way ahead. They're kind of 50-50, so he's able to build enough support. So if they lose in enough states, they won't get a majority in the Electoral College. That means that it goes to the House of Representatives, and then who knows what's going to be happening. This could be an historic event. Now, I want to thank you all, speaking of my channel, for your views and your subscription, because this has helped me now to qualify to be a YouTube partner, which means I could generate a little income from this channel. And I don't know. I think I will do some of this. Probably have a way that you can give regular monthly donations, very small sum, or put ads before and after the video. Already on my Rumble channel, which I get a lot fewer viewers, I have to put commercials on it or they won't give any kind of boost to the channel, recommend it to other people. But on YouTube, I do get recommendations, and now I've got enough view watched and subscribers that I could do this. So I might put ads before and after the videos. I don't want to put them in the middle. I find that intrusive and I don't like it. But if you're willing to sit through a video at the outset, I think hardly anyone listens to the videos at the end of listens to the ads at the end of a video. But give me your comments. I always appreciate your comments, but let me know what you think of the idea of me either putting ads before and after the videos or setting up something where you can become not only a subscriber to the channel to get notices of when I have videos out, but also, give regular donations to help me keep this thing going and help maybe improve the production qualities. And even because my wife is likely going to retire soon and we're going to move to a more expensive state, I might we'll be on a limited budget. I could use a little additional income. So if you could help me with that, I appreciate that too. That's all I got for this week after my pitch. I probably lost a lot of you already, but thanks for watching. And I'll be back again next week. I should be back again next week, see what's going on in this presidential campaign and especially what's going on with the alternative candidates. Bye.
With ease, I see the chains are breaking. We gained our focus, the moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.